Thanks for joining us on Relational Practice, a social work podcast. I'm Dr. Jodie Park.
I'm Rose Mackey, and we're both private practice social workers here in New South Wales, Australia. We work in the fields of child protection, out-of-home care and trauma, and today we're recording this episode on Daryl Land.
Thank you for listening. We would love for you to subscribe, rate and review our podcast and connect with us on Facebook, Instagram and via our YouTube page or webpage. We'll be adding content and videos to all of our platforms regularly. If you want to know where to find our web page, please look at the show notes because I'm pretty sure I always include it there. I'm not 100% on that, but I will from now on.
Well, from this one.
That's right.
How are you?
Yeah, good. How are you?
I'm good.
That's good.
As we always say, because I forgot, send any practice stories, questions or comments you have to our email address, which is relationalpractice01@gmail.com, or you can go through the webpage. There's a contact us section, or even on social media. We would be happy to answer your comments, questions anyway.
All right, so today, Rose, we're going to be talking about worker safety. So before you all roll your eyes at home, keep listening.
Jodie and I were just discussing whether people would be interested in this topic or not, because I guess it can sometimes be a topic that feels a bit like a ticker box. In my experience, when I think back to organisations I've worked in, it felt like they knew that worker safety, psychological and physical safety was important.
Yeah.
But when it came to delivering training or information, it always felt very ticker box. I can, tell whoever, yes, my team has done this training and we'll all just move on. It never felt very genuine or congruent with what the messages is in psychological and physical safety, I have to say. And that's maybe part of what the eye roll might be about, do you think?
Maybe. I mean, my own personal eye roll is that I think there's lots that's been said on this topic. But I think the reason there's lots that's been said on this topic is because it is so important. And I think when you get to that point of being psychologically harmed, then, of course, physically harmed as well, but psychological injuries, I think, are really hard to recover from. So that's why there's a lot said. And that's why we're doing an episode on it today. Because I think when we think about social work practice and we think about what social workers are exposed to day in, day out as part of the work, I think any tips, strategies, conversations about how to keep yourself well is important.
Yeah, and I think worker safety is a bit like cultural humility and cultural understanding. It's something that is never ticked and completed. It's something that we have to continually invest in, and it kind of exists on a continuum.
Yeah.
And I do believe the more you know about vicarious trauma, burnout, stress, spiritual pain, how to keep yourself physically safe, the more able you are to stay well and healthy in a social work or related practice area for longer.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I like your term cultural humility. I'm actually going to steal that.
Okay.
It's a good one. I mean, I know that it's been around a long time, but, I was just, when you said it, I was like, that's a great term. Why don't I use that more?
Now you can.
Yeah, no, I agree completely with what you said. I just got sidetracked. That happens to me very easily. Because I think the cost of psychological injury in particular is to your own life, to your mental health, to you as a person it's huge. And I think sometimes that cost is too much. Too much. It's too much of an expectation on social workers, but yet day in, day out, we go back and we do our jobs.
I would agree with that. I think there are many, many hidden costs of psychological injury. I think we talk lots, at least in Australia we do, about the financial impact of psychological injury on employees, organisations.
Yeah.
But I think the hidden costs on the actual individual. Yeah. And the sometimes pervasive and longevity of those costs we don't often talk about, reflect on and be curious around how do we do it differently or a bit better when, and we'll talk about it today, when sometimes it's the systems that are creating some of that angst within us.
Yeah.
And just the nature of the work we do is emotional and at times overwhelming, and at other times feels incredibly heavy to work in, and they're natural reactions to some of the domains of practice when you're working with humans anyway.
Yeah.
And sometimes I don't think we often acknowledge that to the extent that we should.
Well, I think in particular when you are a relational practitioner, I think you know, in essence, being a relational practitioner means that you have to be vulnerable at some stages in that relationship, because that's part of forming and maintaining a relationship.
Yeah.
That sharing of vulnerability. But of course, as the professional, there's boundaries around your vulnerability, and there's boundaries around what you should be sharing, and there's boundaries definitely around how you should show that vulnerability. We're certainly not advocating that people have crying competitions with their clients. We all know that's not cool. But I think when you open yourself up by being vulnerable with somebody, it makes the trauma or the sharing of the story more intense.
Yes, and I think if you also use empathy, that also makes it more intense, because to be empathetic, to use empathy, you're actually accessing your own emotions and experiencing a client's story or narrative as if you're experiencing the pain yourself. And I think sometimes that can also be really tricky. And so wonder if compassion is a more self-preserving kind of skill that we should tap into more than empathy at times. Because if you think about true empathy, the definition, it's feeling others' pain as if you were feeling it yourself. And I think that can be tricky.
I mean, that's 200% tricky. I guess, that is true empathy. You're right. That's the definition. But I think in a professional sense, there always has to be that element of detachment. It's almost like we're talking in riddles, aren't we? Because we're saying you have to be vulnerable. And I think this is the complexity associated with worker safety. You have to be vulnerable, yet you have to be boundaried, yet you have to be professional, yet you have to be empathetic, but you also have to be detached. Like it's hard. It's really hard.
Really hard.
And it's no wonder that there's so many people out there that are experiencing current or have experienced psychological injury, because you don't always get that balance right in terms of trying to manage all of those things I just listed.
No, and then the, I guess, complexity of that is we're all individuals. We all have our own internal working models.
Yeah.
Current context comes into play too.
100%.
So the way in which you and I experience a client's trauma experience or history is going to be very different depending on a myriad of things. And I think that's the other hidden kind of complexity when you think about worker safety across the domains of our practice areas, because it's different we experience it also differently because of our internal working models and our experiences and our context.
Yeah. God, it's hard. Why does anyone do this job?
It's a really good question.
And I've taught self-care. I think in terms of social work education, self-care should come in lots of different subjects. It should be a component of lots and lots of different social work subjects as you do your degree. But I don't think I've ever taught it in terms of the complexity that we just spoke about. And I think that's a mistake. I think it should be made clear how complex self-care and psychological injury actually should be.
When you said I've taught it, I did not know that. And I was kind of like, what? I've just done, well, not just, but, my master's in social work. I don't recall ever doing any self-care in that.
Are you kidding? In nothing?
I don't.
Through the whole degree?
I generally don't recall doing it.
Wow.
Could be wrong. But when you said I taught it, I was like, what did you teach?
Clean self-care plans, talked about the difference between short-term, long-term, medium-term self-care planning, and how you should have a combination of all of them.
Of short, medium and long-term self-care plans?
Strategies, yeah.
Language I've never heard of.
Of how kind of promoting reflexivity. I said it.
Well done.
Which is part of self-care. It should be seen as part of self-care. That ability to kind of detach yourself for a few minutes, whatever you need, in the moment, to be able to reflect back, to be able to work out what you actually need to, how is this feeling for me? How is it feeling for the client? Should I be doing something different?
Okay.
That's part of self-care.
I mean, it is, but
I can't believe you didn't learn. It didn't come up.
And so I think and we'll talk about self-care, but I think there's different components to self-care. And so there's mind, body, spirit, obviously.
Yeah.
And I think for effective self-care, you need self-care that a part of it, there's effort, a part of it is relaxation, and a part of it is creativity. And so there's kind of those three domains that come into your self-care. But the way so I've clearly not had self-care training, the way I think about it is our self-care needs to change over time because we change.
Yeah,
our context changes, our experience changes. And so what may have worked for me in the beginning, when it no longer works, then I need to change. But I've never thought of it as a short, a medium, or a long-term self-care plan. Like, that's language I've never heard. You've kind of blown my mind.
That's insane that you've never heard that. Do you know, is it Buffalo University in New York City? They have an amazing, their webpage has amazing resources on self-care. They actually have a plan that you can download and fill out.
Okay.
Yeah, it doesn't, I don't know if it breaks it into short-term, medium-term, long-term, but definitely there's a planning tool there.
Yeah, cool. All right, well, Buffalo University. Now we'll all know.
Wow.
Or maybe you all know and it's just Rose that has no clue.
I mean, I think that's a problem, though. If that is not something that you experience as part of your social work education, then it's fair to say that there's been lots of people who probably haven't experienced learning about self-care.
Perhaps I am going to message my friend who did the degree with me and be like, because she has a very good memory, did we do this?
Yeah.
No, yeah.
It's actually not okay, is it?
No.
It's really not.
Not when you think about the impacts of vicarious trauma. And maybe that'd be a good segue to look at vicarious trauma and the definition. When you think about the impacts of vicarious trauma.
Yeah.
So vicarious trauma, and these definitions are kind of our definitions because you will find so many different definitions about vicarious trauma, stress and burnout. So hopefully we'll talk about what makes them different. And that'll help with the understanding as opposed to this is a clinical definition or a definition from the research.
Do you mean what makes the definitions different or what makes those concepts different? Okay, cool.
And how they're experienced differently, I guess.
I mean, you scared me for a second because I was like, I don't know any other definitions. I was like, shit.
Nope. Good language. So my understanding of vicarious trauma is that this is, and some people refer to it as secondary trauma. It is not when we as individuals in practice have experienced trauma. It is hearing and seeing our clients' trauma. So through our interactions with clients and their trauma, and this can be through written material, through the telling of stories, through even seeing it, we our worldview is changed. And our beliefs and our psychological well-being, they change. So we have an internal shift in how we view the world because of our experiences working with clients who have, experienced trauma or are experiencing trauma. The one thing about vicarious trauma that sets it very different from compassion fatigue and burnout is that the symptoms of vicarious trauma are the same as if you had experienced the trauma yourself. So the symptoms of PTSD and the symptoms of vicarious trauma are the same. So we're talking, intrusive thoughts, anxiety, flashbacks, looping, ruminating, all of the signs and symptoms that someone's got PTSD or complex trauma are the signs and symptoms of vicarious trauma.
I mean, it makes sense, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Particularly when you think about it from that cognitive position where you actually are taking on that story. You've listened to that story. You've interrogated it. You've reflected on it.
Or you've seen photographs, or you've been, watching videos. You think about all the different types of ways in which we practice in and around trauma. We watch videos, we look at photographs, we read accounts, we read statements. There's so many different ways we are exposed to other people's trauma. And what happens, my understanding with vicarious trauma, is that our worldview is altered, shifted, and we are experiencing the same symptoms as people who have experienced the trauma themselves.
Yeah, that's huge.
It's massive when you actually think about it.
Yeah, no, it is. It's massive. All right. Do you want to do the rest? You're really good at this.
So, compassion fatigue. You all have noticed how Jodie does that sometimes.
No, but you're good at it. You've got to go with your strengths, Rose. Truly.
So, my understanding of compassion fatigue is that it's a profound physical, emotional, and spiritual exhaustion, which results from chronic and intense caregiving And lots of literature talks about compassion fatigue as the cost of doing. The cost of doing, or the cost of caring, or the cost of being. I don't know how I feel about those kind of words, but that's what lots of literature talks about. It results in a reduced capacity for empathy. And the signs and symptoms of compassion fatigue are exhaustion, and this is exhaustion that sleep does not fix, apathy, and burnout.
Can I tell you a little story about empathy?
Yeah.
Just because I always think about this. You know, I was doing training once, and this one, I think maybe psychologist, anyway, I think, said to me that in her view, this was a trained person, you only have so much capacity for empathy, and then because it's like a physiological thing, and once that tap runs dry, you have no more empathy. It's gone forever. No, that's what she actually said. I tell you what I did in training.
Did you hear it right? Okay.
I did in training exactly what you just did.
I'm like, is this a joke? Is this a story? Where are we going with this joke?
No.
I fundamentally, at all aspects of my core, disagree with that.
I mean, same. But the whole training was kind of like that. So I tell you what, I did not argue. I just went, okay, right. I hadn't heard that view before, and moved on.
We have a finite capacity to show empathy in our lifespan.
It's
what you're telling me.
It's almost like a tap, and when it runs dry, it runs dry.
I wonder perhaps if that person maybe was experiencing compassion fatigue and burnout, because I wonder if that's what you were seeing and experiencing.
I feel like I wondered if maybe she was getting confused with some other physiological kind of part of the body, like adrenaline, or like, you know, if you kind of sit in a heightened state. And there's all that kind of research that talks about how it takes, God, I might be so wrong with this. Please tell me if I am. I'm just like reaching in the back of my brain. But there's all that research that says if when you are kind of hypervigilant and you have to sit at that state for a long period of time, then it takes more for your body to respond kind of in a flight-fight scenario, because your body is so used to sitting at such a heightened state. Does that sound right?
I think it does, and I think it has something to do with calories as well, and the amount of calories you need for a person that sits. I mean, I don't understand the in-depth detail of that, but yeah, maybe. I don't know. My belief is that empathy is not like a tap, and it doesn't turn off and it stays off for good. That's not my understanding.
Mine neither. And I was very confused and concerned that this person was practicing, but I also, like I said, completely own this, did not want to tackle that in that moment, because I just needed that training to finish.
I just love the honesty. There's no bullshit. It's just real. And some days we have really bad days. And for that person, perhaps they were just, I mean, I said stupid things. I say them all the time. Perhaps it was just something that fell out of her mouth or his mouth, and here we are. But yeah, I know Brené Brown talks and writes a lot about empathy. There's heaps, and there's different definitions of empathy, and there's different types of empathy. So much in the world of empathy that I'm clearly not across all of it, but
I know, and maybe they were right and we're wrong. So please let us know.
If anyone knows if empathy is like a tap and it turns off,
please
let us know.
Please let me know, because yes, please.
So the other injury in the psychological space that we want to look at today is burnout. And this is intensive frustration, cynicism, decreased productivity, feeling disengaged from your job. When I was saying to Jodie here are the symptoms of burnout, I was like, never have I experienced intense frustration in my job. Never have I been the cynic.
Never.
Nope.
Not even now.
Decreased productivity, don't even know what that looks like. And feeling disengaged from the job, no.
But I mean, in seriousness, how many of us have felt that at any given time?
And sometimes for a sustained period of time too.
Yeah.
And I think burnout, compassion fatigue, vicarious trauma, I think they can also, you can experience varying levels and degrees of symptoms, right?
Of course,
so from low impact to high impact. But I also think you could experience burnout and compassion fatigue at the same time.
Yes.
And I think those kind of symptoms, the more intensely they're felt and the more impact they have on your life, the more you could be, I think vicarious trauma, we could be more prone to vicarious trauma, I guess, if burnout and compassion fatigue are not managed well, we're not aware of them, and we're not maybe having a self-care plan like you talked about, or having some really good quality supervision to understand, because I think there's lots of barriers for individuals in recognizing they're burnt out, they've got compassion fatigue, and even vicarious trauma. I think there's so many barriers in workplaces and individually that prohibit us as practitioners from recognizing the signs and symptoms early. And I think the earlier we recognize it, the healthier we can be in the workplace for longer, as opposed to not
a short stay. A short stay in the
probably
profession.
say that a whole lot better than I do. But
I mean, do you know what? I kind of think that in social work, vicarious trauma goes hand in hand with practice. I actually do, because I think, but in varying degrees, because I think there's an element of vicarious trauma in all that we do. I honestly think that, but it doesn't always get to that point where it changes your worldview.
So it's not always intensely felt at the other end of the continuum where we're having flashbacks, anxiety, panic attacks.
100%. No, of course. But I think there's just this kind of, I don't know, expectation or understanding, or just this kind of acceptance, that's probably the better word, that vicarious trauma symptoms of vicarious trauma are going to be felt if you are someone who works in this profession. Because how else, unless you're like, you have no interaction with people, maybe you're in a position where it's more kind of corporate, maybe you wouldn't feel it then as a social worker. But I think if you have interaction with people, if you're in a policy role where you are making decisions that you know is going to affect a lot of people, and you've heard stories or seen things that have informed some of the work that you do, there's a risk of vicarious trauma.
Oh, I think there's definitely a risk of vicarious trauma. And I think because you're working with people's trauma, their trauma experiences, their trauma stories, you're seeing, you're hearing the trauma, absolutely. I think we're all at risk of vicarious trauma, and that is why self-care plans are so important.
Well, I go back to my point that I think it's an accepted risk. I'm going to put that accepted word in there, because I think it is. I think people just expect it to happen, so therefore it's kind of okay. It's kind of like a badge of honor when it happens. Like when you might not be having the best day, or you might be dreaming of work, or you might find it really hard to calm down after an intense situation, or, something else. You might have some change of feeling, some change of mood, whatever. I think it can almost be seen like a bit of a badge. This is part of my profession, and obviously I'm doing a good job because I'm feeling this.
And I think depending on your supervisors and your team, like if you've got a burnout, cynical supervisor who's like, I've been having nightmares for a year. Do you know, like you can recall situations where almost it is a badge of honor and it's kind of one-upped. I'll tell you, how I'm experiencing the workplace, like welcome to the world almost. Welcome to the profession.
That's right.
So maybe the accepted risk, I think.
Well, and the question is, should it be an accepted risk? I mean, this isn't a question for us to talk about now, but this is just because I think that's a big conversation. But I think that's something that we should be considering as social workers. Are we happy that it's an accepted risk? Or is there something we can put in place to mitigate that risk in some way? I mean, I think the first thing would be actually teaching students about it. I mean, mind-blowing. I think the other thing is Vikki Reynolds is a Canadian social worker, and she writes a lot about this. She writes about reframing burnout. So it's not about being an individual deficit, but more as an ethical conflict. So I think either I've made this up or the term she uses is spiritual pain, or moral injury. So when our values and our ethics are challenged by the system in which we are working in, we have pain against our ethics. And Vikki Reynolds talks about how sometimes this work violates our soul and our ethics, and that that is the ethical conflict, and that it's the system that needs to be held accountable.
for the injuries.
I mean, good luck. Good luck with making that. I mean, that's terrible, isn't it? Me saying that.
Yeah,
we kind of yeah, it is. I mean, we kind of say the system. Yeah. Anyway, I'm going to let that go because I don't want to expand on that point because I'll probably get myself into trouble. Okay. Maybe we talk a little bit about some of those symptoms. Generally speaking, kind of the symptoms are obviously going to be different or kind of similar, but also maybe a little bit different, depending on whether you're talking about vicarious trauma, burnout, compassion fatigue, or spiritual pain or moral injury. But what are some common symptoms that you think you might experience if you are experiencing one or all of those things?
So I think let's start with vicarious trauma. Same signs and symptoms as if you have been traumatized yourself. So intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance. Obviously, your internal working model is going to be impacted.
Tell me how. How would your internal working model be impacted? And you don't have to tell me how. You can say, Jodie, you just stop and work it out yourself. But tell me how.
So if I am experiencing vicarious trauma, I have been impacted by clients' trauma, and trauma is often relational. So think about the work we do, domestic violence, physical abuse, sexual abuse. It's relational.
Yeah.
So someone has done something to someone that has caused abuse and pain, and the result of that has been this trauma experience. So my internal working model, how can I continue to think the world is safe, that others are safe, and relationships are a safe place?
I mean, that's kind of the premise that people have positive internal.
Yeah, well, and if it's already a negative internal model, then it's going to reinforce.
Yes.
The world isn't safe, relationships aren't safe.
Yeah, that's true.
Tell me why you disagree.
It's not that I disagree. I just think, when we're kind of thinking about internal working model from that attachment perspective, absolutely it kind of forms from relationships, but it's reciprocated interactions. Which is that's the bit that I find tricky to think about. How, not impossible, but how being exposed to the work would actually impact greatly on your internal working model when you're thinking about how do you have reciprocated interactions.
Because all of your client stories, so vicarious trauma is other people's trauma. And my understanding is there might be one client or one case that tips you into more intense symptoms, but it's an accumulation. So an accumulation of all of these client stories and impacts of trauma changes your worldview. That's the kind of commonality in the definitions. So if my worldview changes...
Yes. You're saying therefore it changes your internal working model. That's what you're saying. I guess I don't see it that way. I definitely think it would change your worldview 100%. But I don't know because for me, I'm stuck on that reciprocated interaction stuff. And I think that for internal working model to be formed, the reciprocated interactions have to be with someone of meaning or people of meaning, because we know we can have more than one attachment. So someone significant to the child, because it forms in childhood. Of course, it can change. We know that.
Yeah.
Trauma theory tells us that it can change throughout our lifespan, and it does change throughout our lifespan because of the other relationships that we have. But I guess I always think that there still has to be an element of meaning attached to the person who's doing those reciprocated interactions, which means that I'm kind of talking myself into your point of view. But I think if you attach that much meaning to a client interaction or to a client, then you're already kind of like in a boat up a river, because you're already putting yourself at risk of experiencing a psychological injury anyway, because your whole way of interaction and the way that you are placing meaning on a professional relationship means that you are more vulnerable. Did that even make sense? In my head, I'm thinking, I don't know, Jodie.
It might just be that I don't follow.
Well, because it was a tricky conversation, Rose.
Well, it's good. But I think you're having multiple relationships with clients. You're in a relationship with the client.
Yes, but
multiple interactions.
But the degree, the intensity and the meaning attached to that relationship should not be to the same level as it would a personal relationship.
Should not be, agree. But if you're working and saturated in trauma experiences and you spend 40 hours a week, years at a, decades working in that trauma, how is that not going to impact the way you view the world, the way you view others?
I think that it does. I agree completely that it changes your worldview. Of course, that's what the theory says, and I completely agree. My sticking point is whether it changes your internal working model.
I don't know
either.
I'm curious what others have to say about that.
Yes, and if you could keep up with my very strange circular thinking out loud moment.
Which many people would be able to, just not I.
No, God, I can't keep up with myself at times. I think, what are you even saying? But yes, I was kind of thinking out loud. I honestly think that if you're at that point where you attach that much meaning to a client or to a professional relationship, then I do believe that that ship has sailed in terms of experiencing vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue.
So I think if you use that language, yes, but I'm not sure people intentionally are attaching that much meaning. Like, I don't know about the intent or the language, and that's what I'm kind of stuck on.
I don't think it's conscious, though. I don't think you would say, I really like this person, therefore they're going to become really important to me. It's not a conscious thing.
No, but yeah, I don't know. For me, it's the language. How you explain it in that language, I go,
doesn't sit.
Doesn't sit well. And I think if you think of some people's careers over, think of child abuse detectives. Anyone that works in the child abuse unit, for, years on end, being exposed to, hearing, seeing, watching that level of trauma for years and years and years, unconsciously. Yeah, no, I don't even know what I'm going to.
Yeah, because it goes back to that question. For me, it would always go back to that question around how much meaning is attached to that relationship and how many reciprocated interactions do you have with that one person or numerous people. Yeah, that's what it kind of would go back to for me. But, I mean, we know that, because we've said this just before, that part of the, a symptom of experiencing vicarious trauma, burnout, compassion fatigue is the fact that you become confused about relationships because it's kind of, we go back to that conversation we had around vulnerability, because you make yourself more vulnerable because that's part of a relationship, but that vulnerability becomes really confused in terms of the boundary you place around your own vulnerability.
It's messy.
It's messy. And I think that is a very complex, confusing conversation, but a good one. A good one.
So vicarious trauma is kind of like the world feels dangerous.
Yes.
Whereas burnout is, I have nothing left to give.
100%.
I am physically and emotionally exhausted.
Yeah.
No amount of sleep is fixing this. I just cannot keep going back and doing the same thing.
And it's kind of that stuff where you dread Monday, you start feeling changes on a Sunday because you have to go back to work. You might get some chronic somatic symptoms like headaches, or you feel sick or nausea or, diarrhea or something.
Yeah.
And I think the one that I've always found is as soon as you go on holiday, you become sick.
Yes, straight away. It's like day 3, you're in bed, you cannot get out of bed.
Yeah.
The other one is back. How often has your back just gone? You're unable to physically get out of bed because your body somatically is felt, and your body, because consciously you're dreading it and that you have nothing, but you're on autopilot almost. And at points in my career, 3 times I woke up and my back was just gone. My body was like, we are done.
I remember that, actually. I remember it, and it was for ages, for days and days. You were like
unable to physically move. I was in so much and reflection is a very powerful tool.
Yeah.
A few weeks and months after that, I was like, oh my goodness, all the signs and symptoms of burnout were there.
Yeah.
But so were all the barriers.
Well, because then, and I think we've talked about in other episodes, you kind of get that martyr thinking, don't you? You kind of think, well, if I don't do it, who's going to do it? I have to do it because it's really important and it's my job. Of course it's important. It's your job.
This is just the role and everyone else is doing it and I have to pay the bills. And if everyone else can keep going, why can't I keep going?
Yeah.
I just need to toughen up. I just need to get through the day. I just need to get through the week. I just got to get through too. I just got to. You just keep going.
And I think going back to what you said about Vikki Reynolds, and I know I was a bit like that about it, but this I think is one of those system issues, isn't it? When you have a whole workforce that thinks in that way, that I have to keep going, that it's my job. If I don't do it, who else is going to do it? Blah, 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 blah. Then, that actually is culture, isn't it? In terms of organizational culture.
Yes. And sometimes your family culture or your, the culture in which you've been socialized in also reinforces hard work, not taking sick days. That was, there are some family cultures that really hold those values high. And then so that culture impacts and is exacerbated by your work culture. And then you kind of think, and if add in you're a perfectionist on top of it, like there's so many different layers of personality, socialization, cultural norms and values that are those barriers to recognizing the signs and symptoms of burnout.
True. Do before COVID, that's true. Before COVID, my bar for, when you're feeling sick, my bar around whether I would have a day off or not is if I could get up and get dressed, then I was going to work. And there'd be some days where I would be so sick.
I know.
But I still got up and got dressed, and therefore in my head I went to work. Isn't that crazy?
It is crazy. And I remember when we were in the same office for a while, it didn't matter what time of day I got to work.
Yeah.
You were there.
Always.
Like clockwork. By, I reckon, 7 o'clock, you were in the office, had already, computer on, work open. Didn't matter what time I tried to beat you to the office, you were friggin' there. And you would have we had RDOs or flex days. You would have them as in not be present at the office.
Yeah.
But you still would do some phone call answering and some emails.
Yeah.
But it didn't matter what shape you were in that office.
I was. And looking back, that's just silly. It's really just not okay. But that was how it was for me.
Yeah. So why did COVID change it?
I think because there was this, the emphasis on thinking about the impact on other people if you are sick.
Yeah, okay.
Do you know what I mean? If you are sick and you are then spreading it. Whereas before, I never thought about that. Before, it was always about,
I just have to.
It's
so interesting how we changed.
It's
good.
Yeah.
I think it's good. All right, so compassion fatigue, kind of how it's expressed is like I have no empathy left. Maybe the tap has run dry. Maybe that's what that person was experiencing.
They might be onto something, man. They might be onto something.
Some of the key symptoms are irritability, emotional numbness, and inability. A client's telling you something quite traumatic or quite upsetting to them, and you've just got no ability left to connect with their pain.
You're like, oh my God, I've heard this story 100 times.
What time's lunch?
Yeah, what time's lunch? Well, can we just do this another time? I'm just not feeling it right now. You'll be right. That's right. You'll be right.
I'm just going to make this referral. And it's just, just that total apathy. That's kind of the key symptoms. Whereas I think for spiritual pain, Vikki Reynolds would say the kind of core narrative in that is that this work is violating my soul, spiritual pain, moral injury, and the key symptoms are guilt, loss of meaning, and feeling like a cog in a machine that does nothing but hurt people.
So true.
It is actually true.
That's really true. Like I can definitely go and think about times where I would have felt probably all of those things actually.
I have, definitely. To varying degrees. Some
quite
severe. And then, at other times, less severe, thank goodness.
Yeah. Yeah, thank goodness. Thank goodness. I'm sorry, though, that it got to the point where it was quite severe.
Yeah, well, we got through the other side, so that's good.
That is good. And it's just so sad and so hard that your job can actually cause you to feel, on an emotional, on a cognitive, and also on a worldview level, how your job can change so many things for you internally and externally.
Yeah. And I think this is true for, like, we're obviously social workers, we're talking about social workers, but I think about first responders, police, ambulance, fireys. Like, think of what they, especially in vicarious trauma, what it is that they experience day in, day out. Prosecutors, like investigators. There's so many professions that you can think of where people are continuously exposed, saturated in other people's trauma. And it's the cost of doing business, or the systems are set up to continue working, like, the cogs keep going. But the impact on the professionals, can be so enormous. And I don't know where you're listening from, but in New South Wales, I understand why our workers' compensation is through the roof. But I also think of the professions where the compensation or the understanding does not equate to people. I guess for me, the end goal always is to leave the profession, whether that's because I've won the lotto or I've retired, healthy physically and mentally.
Yeah.
It's the longevity, the long term. I don't want to leave my profession and actually go into retirement, because that's my plan, being so impacted by the work I've done that I actually am not healthy and well enough to enjoy my retirement. And I don't know that we invest as a society enough in the longevity.
So not just we're talking more broad than just social work practice. We're talking about all of those professions that see trauma that can experience vicarious trauma on a daily basis. Yeah.
And they also can experience compassion fatigue, burnout. I mean, think of nurses, doctors.
Yeah, of course.
It's so widespread. And I just wonder what it looks like at the end of the day when we all leave, because the goal is to leave healthy and well, and
with your mental health intact, hopefully. I mean, maybe a little more cynical about life. Maybe develop some kind of dark humor. Let's talk about humor, because we haven't really raised that yet. Do you think that kind of dark, sarcastic, kind of cynical humor, do you think that's a symptom of vicarious trauma?
Yeah,
compassion fatigue, burnout?
Fatigue. I think it can be. Burnout, yes. Absolutely can be. I think it's probably not very popular view, but I think it can also just be a coping mechanism.
Oh, I think 200% it is. I think it is a coping mechanism, but I think, I agree. But I do wonder if there's a line that can get crossed.
Absolutely.
And that's when you kind of think maybe it's kind of still about coping, because you're trying to cope with feeling symptoms related to the changes that are happening because you're experiencing psychological injury on some degree. Yeah, so definitely a coping mechanism, but I think it might cross a line sometimes to become more than just a coping mechanism. Maybe it is
symptom.
Yes.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, dear. I need more coffee. I actually didn't have my coffee today, so this is what you're hearing.
The day is still young. Make you one after.
I definitely need my coffee. Okay, I used to actually say that to my students, and I think some of them knew when I did have my coffee, because I was like, this is hard work.
I can't believe no one just didn't run out and get you a coffee and bring it back, because it would have been a much more pleasant experience for the student body.
For all of us. For all of us. All right. What do you want to talk about now, Rose?
Talk about physical safety?
I think I do. Because I think that I know in my practice, whenever I've worked for an organisation and they've talked about physical safety, it's been that, 2 lines. Make sure you can see the door and there's nothing impeding you in the door. And
someone knows where you are.
Yes.
And you have access to a phone.
Yeah, so maybe 4 lines. And that's kind of been it. Would you say?
Sometimes there's a petrol in the car and park the car.
Oh, yes.
So you can easily get out of the street. Yeah, that's when I think of physical safety training. They're my key takeaway messages. Good messages. Not saying they're not good messages. Very practical, useful messages. Always have a car that has enough petrol to leave. Have your car parked in a easy to leave, direction, know where your exits are, kind of stand, have nothing between you and the exit if possible, have someone in your workplace to know where you are and what time you're expected back, and have a mobile phone. I mean, I worked rurally for a long time and there was no reception, and I loved it on properties where there were numerous firearms. But I still took a phone. I just didn't have reception, but it was always charged.
So it was kind of useless.
But it was almost kind of like
an armor.
Yeah, I've got the phone. Tick, compliant rows, people-pleasing rows. I've ticked all of my physical safety boxes. I've done everything to keep myself physically safe.
Did you feel threatened when you at different times?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I have felt physically threatened many times in my career. A client tried to run me over, remember, when I was working out?
Oh, that's right.
Rurally, and I was running across the road and my high heel, I'd been at court, my high heel fell off and I put the high heel through my bottom of my foot. Oh, that's so much pain. I mean, clearly it's interesting because that experience was so quick and I almost didn't realize that it was this client trying to run me over, and the physical pain was so immense. And, I went to hospital and my manager turned up. It was a Friday night. My manager turned up. The senior manager was ringing. It was, felt so cared for and so much concern from the organization. And that is like a blimp to me. And it was probably the most dangerous in the sense that I actually could have been killed.
Yeah.
But it's not at all. When I think of other situations I've been in, I felt much more scared, much more fearful, had more adrenaline and been, I guess, in a more dangerous position for a lot longer than what that was. And it's kind of weird to me because I actually could have been killed.
I think I feel the same way when I've talked on the podcast before about that time I was in that house, that siege. And I think I feel the same way as you. It's almost like a, whatever kind of memory.
Yeah.
But it really was huge.
Massive.
And I made some mistakes in terms of my worker safety on that day. But, but it doesn't feel, I don't think I give it probably what you're doing or have done, the importance that it should have in terms of the possible consequences.
Yeah, it's probably not in our top 10 of scary situations.
No.
Isn't that interesting?
It's so weird.
And every time I love a pedicure, every time the person giving me a pedicure runs their finger over my scar in my foot and says, "Oh," and I'm like,
Yeah, right.
It's like,
it's
painful in winter and it's a constant reminder, wear proper shoes to court, people. Look before you cross a road to make sure there's not a client sitting in a car waiting for you to cross the road, but that's about it.
I remember having to run from the steps of children's court to my car with a caseworker once with this family chasing us. And do you know
try not to laugh.
I know. If they'd have caught us, we would have been hurt. But the thing that's I think about when I think about that memory is the sheriff and the court just watching because they cannot step outside of the court boundary. And so did not. Like we could see him and he could see us. Obviously, he was watching and did not actually help at all.
See, boundaries. See how influential boundaries can be in self-care, physically and psychologically.
Yes.
Imagine how you'd been caught.
I wonder what he would have done.
I wonder that too. And I wonder the impact of stepping across the boundary psychologically and physically and doing what I would say is probably human and what I would hope and imagine would be done.
Yeah.
There's an impact for that, but imagine also maintaining your boundary and not. There's an impact for that too. Both can lead to vicarious trauma.
Oh, 100%. 100%.
Spiritual pain.
Yeah.
Physical, there's a physical element. Have they stepped over the boundary? This is why it's so complex and nuanced and it needs to be taught and understood and a lifelong kind of learning.
I mean, I think that me talking about that memory has reminded me of another memory of a caseworker I think did get assaulted, and it was the same thing at the court, but outside of the boundary of court with the sheriff watching. So actually, I don't know if it was the same sheriff or not. I don't know, but that was the reason why they said they did not intervene,
because that's their boundary. It's so interesting, isn't it?
It is interesting.
And I don't know if you've seen on social media, there's all those, and they do my head in now, but social experiments where someone will grab a kid and run down an alley to see who responds, or and will do the hand signal for help, or there's a creep that comes up to a kid in a park and how many people respond, or how many people don't respond that they show. And how much of it is that, what's that called? That bystander.
What is that called? Bystander something.
Yeah, that.
Bystander effect?
Something like that. Be good to know. But yeah, how much of that, and is that a personality kind of trait? Like, what is it that inhibits some people from helping others? And what is it that helps keep a sheriff or someone else in profession firm within their boundaries of, I can see someone getting assaulted, but my boundary is the court and I'm not stepping over? Fascinating.
It is fascinating.
If I was a researcher, maybe that's 2 areas of research I'd be curious about.
Well, you can always go back.
Nope. I'm dead.
But it is. I mean, I assume there's been so many studies done on that, because how do they know what bystander effect is?
Yeah, true.
But it maybe we should read about it.
Yeah.
It might be like, whoo, mind blown.
What when you think about physical safety, what are the key takeaways after, over 2 decades doing work that can be dangerous physically?
I think it's about, before you enter into an environment that could be potentially dangerous, you need to know about the person you're meeting. You need to actually have a little bit of information about them. You need to know as much as you can given your context. So, say in a child protection scenario, you're going to know a lot more than, say, you would in a therapeutic scenario. But whatever your context is, whatever role you have, try and find out something about this person. Even if it's just reading them and sussing them out and using your own gut to kind of guide you in terms of what you should be doing. Because we know that history is the best predictor of current risk on so many different levels in so many different ways.
So when I think to what you say, Jodie, about knowing a bit about the history of the person, the mother that tried to run me over, the reason we were involved and the police were involved is because she'd been using her children as target practice. And there was obviously a whole lot of, well, not obviously, there was a whole lot of physical, emotional and psychological abuse occurring, but the manner in which she used her children as targets was absolutely, at that time of my career, and probably still, mind-blowing. It should have known. Like, when you say that, I think it makes perfect sense that someone who had been criminally charged, had lost her children in the interim, that there was, a huge tendency looking at her past behaviour for violence.
Yeah.
It's a good tip, is what I'm trying to say.
Yeah. I think it is a good tip. It's kind of, I mean.
And I think sometimes there's a tendency that we downplay the information we read about our clients.
Yes.
And I think that can be a bit of a trap for people that we had not been in these professions. If we'd been reading it, might have been like, oh, wow, that's kind of really alarming. But also as society moves on and we, it's very clear that children being abused, women being raped, it's not that much of a big deal. There's not a whole lot of men and other people in jail for these crimes. If you look at, even the Australian childhood study, the most recent one about young people's experiences of abuse and neglect before the age of, let's say, the 16 or 18, you see the number of young people who've experienced physical and sexual and emotional abuse before 16 or 18, and you look at our prison population, we obviously are not that alarmed by children being hurt. And I don't know if that's just some conditioning that we're in this time in the world, but really past behaviour, the information we know about clients, we need to be, I think, sometimes a little less blasé about what it is that they've actually done Yeah, and the extent of harm that they've caused to other people and what that actually means for us in a worker safety lens.
100% agree. 100% agree. Because then I think when you were talking, I was thinking that it's about reading what's happened, like or finding out what's happened, but then having the next step is about putting that together in terms of possible consequences for you as the worker. And I think people, I don't know, I think maybe there's a reluctance to do that, because if we go back to that accepted word in terms of it's accepted that you will be exposed to hard things, hard times, hard information, and having to put up with or having to be exposed to maybe potential violence is one of those accepted risks. Don't you think?
Yeah.
It's a bit like, don't you remember? I remember this as a caseworker, and people would be on the phone just, threatening, making all these kind of obscene, just screaming at other caseworkers around me. And I remember thinking, because remember I came from a different organisation, and I went into this child protection kind of environment, and I remember thinking, is that what I have to put up with? Like, do I just have to listen to people yelling and screaming at me? Because I didn't know. I was really confused about it, because the place where I came from, the organisation I had come from, you just wouldn't put up with that. You would hang up, or you would say, we need to talk later when you're calm. Like, you just wouldn't expose yourself.
Yes.
But in this area, in this office, this new child protection office that was like a different world to me at the time, people would be there and you could hear it. Some would have them on speakerphone, so we were all exposed to it. Do you know what I mean?
Talk about the ripple effects of vicarious trauma.
Absolutely. Absolutely. It took me a while, probably a good couple of years, to actually work out and I think to be strong enough to not put up with that.
Yeah.
And to tell people around me, you don't have to put up with that. You don't have to have people screaming obscenities at you, making threats and yelling at you. Just hang the phone up. Like, it took a long time. But I think as social workers, we don't have to put up with that.
We don't. And that's boundaries, right?
That's boundaries.
The boundaries that your employer, boundaries of your team, and self-boundaries. Where are our boundaries? Why are we accepting that there's no boundary around that?
Yeah. It's that accepted risk, isn't it?
And there is, probably a whole lot of accepted risks, but where are our boundaries and how do they come into play here? And where are the organisations who are employing us, where are the boundaries that they're enforcing to? Because the sheriffs, in your example, had very clear boundaries.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, good on them in a way. I do wonder. Well, they didn't help the caseworker that was assaulted, so I was not looking to them for help at the time.
No, it's just a reflection after, right, where you're like, hang on, they're just watching.
Yes.
And my example, in where I was working at the time, so the courthouse was on one side of the street and the high school was on the other side of the street. And of course, it was right as high school, finish the end of the day. So lucky, because no one from the court came out. It was high school, the teachers and kids that came to help me and got me off the road.
Wow.
There was no one from this side of the road.
Yeah.
And in the courthouse were police, were sheriffs, were court staff.
Wow.
And it was, teachers and young kids that dragged me off the road and got me on the other side of the high school fence.
Isn't that interesting? That's crazy.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. All right. I think we actually, you and I think we're really aware of our own physical safety. And I don't know. Well, I don't know. I think sometimes we're probably a little risky, but I think where possible, we kind of look after each other a little bit, which I really appreciate.
Definitely. I love when you message, I'm like, Jodie, if you haven't heard from me by this time today, this is where I'll be.
Yeah.
And can you check in? And you always send me a text or ring me.
Yeah. Or if it's really concerning, we'll just take each other.
Yeah.
Like, we'll do it together.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But, in private practice, you don't always have that luxury. And I feel like that is a bit of a luxury.
It is. And a privilege.
Yeah.
To be able to do that, because there are times, where absolutely you need to go and see a client in their home for different types of assessment, but the information is clear as day that there could be a risk. And I think earlier you said about our gut, And I don't think we often talk about, and this is not for everyone because the impacts of trauma and where you are, on your ladder. But when you have a gut instinct, I just wish we would teach people more to trust their gut instinct. You can always come back to a client visit. You can always reschedule. We should not be teaching or not even acknowledging that sometimes our body is, because our body is cueing signals of safety and danger. And when our body signals danger, we need to listen.
We do need to listen. That's true. And we need to, if we have that really strong bodily response, we need to work out, stop and reflect on why.
Why?
And how can we make this safer?
Yeah. You don't have to necessarily, never see that client again, but how do you make it safer? Do you go back and bring a colleague? Do you reschedule at the office? There's a million things that you could do depending on the situation. But if your body is telling you that you are unsafe, listen.
Yeah.
Get out. You can always reschedule. Nothing is, what I've learned, nothing is that urgent and that important that you need to be at risk.
Yeah, I agree. I agree completely. Yeah. Yeah. I think I do wish that it was something that we did, that we listened to our bodies, because they always tell us the truth.
Yeah.
It's just about whether you can hear it, because, there's usually so many other competing priorities.
Yes. And if you've got some signs and symptoms of, burnout, compassion fatigue, stress, vicarious trauma, whatever, that's going to complicate how in tune you are with your body and how you understand and recognize what your body's telling you. So it is, difficult, complicated, nuanced, use whatever word you want to use, but we should be talking more in our profession around, what our body's telling us, and that we should listen when it comes to worker safety.
Well, because even that, like if your body is kind of inflamed and giving you these signals all of the time that everything is dangerous, then that's a symptom on its own, isn't it?
Absolutely.
That you probably are experiencing some kind of psychological injury.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. All right. I wonder, Rose, so much more, do you think?
I think we just need to say intentionally we have not talked about or gone into depth around self-care strategies. This is intentionally about psychological injury, can't speak now, physical safety. We've mentioned self-care, we've mentioned boundaries. We probably haven't mentioned self-compassion. That's the other kind of antidote to vicarious trauma, stress, burnout. The compassion we extend to ourselves needs to be really, we need to consider what that looks like when we're working in this field, because the research is very clear that self-compassion is one of the antidotes.
What's an example of being self-compassionate?
Self-compassion might be enforcing your boundary that I'm leaving work every day this week at 5:00 and I'm not going to log on when I get home, and I'm not going to tell myself that I am not professional, that I am not, I'm not a good team player and I'm not a slacker because I've actually enforced my boundary and gone home at 5:00 and disconnected. That's self-compassion.
So part of it sounds like it's about action, but part of it is also about the self-talk, the narrative.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay.
And you think about the advice you would often extend to friends, family, colleagues. Always we are generally so compassionate. Think about the internal monologue you have about yourself in similar situations. Often we're not as self-compassionate.
Yeah.
So what you extend to others, extend to yourself.
We talked about that before, that, our brains are not always our best friends in terms of the messages it gives us. So just recognizing that. And I think when you're feeling vulnerable or you're feeling, not 100%, then your brain is probably more likely to give you a narrative that's not positive.
More likely to be your frenemy than your friend on that day.
That's true.
Yep.
Yeah, it's really true. So, and the reason we haven't talked about specific self-care strategies is because they need to be individual.
Yes, but I do like that there's a short, medium and long-term plan, and I'm going to look into that.
Because it has to be more than just having a bubble bath at night. Do you know what I mean? Like that could be part of it, but there has to be stuff that you can do in the moment.
Yes.
And there has to be, I guess good self-care strategy is something that allows you to come back from where you've been in terms of if you're in the moment and you suddenly start to feel anxious or you feel yourself kind of spiraling, how do you bring yourself back to the here and now? That's what I mean by that. Or a more medium long-term plan, then what strategies can you employ that can you actually achieve to bring you back to the person that you want to be? That's what I mean by that.
It's a good way of looking at it.
Yeah. All right. I think that might be it.
I think that does bring us to the end of another episode of Relational Practice, a social work podcast. We really hope today's discussion was a little bit funny, but more than that, valuable to your practice, and maybe hopefully gave you some information that can help you better understand maybe some of the signs and symptoms of psychological injury, and even some of the barriers, because the more we know, the better placed we are to understand what's happening and to be proactive as opposed to reactive.
Absolutely.
In maintaining our mental and physical safety in the jobs that we're doing.
100%. And I just want to say, hey, if you kept up with my very confusing rambling today, good on you.
To ensure you're always in the loop, please follow our podcast. Your subscription and social media engagement helps us build our community and make these conversations more accessible to other practitioners. Thanks for joining us. Stay messy, stay relational, and we'll talk to you next time.
Can we just do the normal one, please?
I was waiting for you to say I don't like it. It's my fault.
Can we just do the normal one?
Sure can. Thanks for tuning in. We'll see you next time. Remember to always practice relationally.
Isn't it stay safe?
Stay safe and remember to practice relationally. I don't have it written. Let's do it.
Okay. I think that's what it is.
It is. Thanks for joining us today, guys. Stay safe and remember to always practice relationally.
See ya.
Bye.